to many, for the sole reason that we do not proclaim on matters of belief and traditional religious ideas. We tend to be a bunch of persons with strong opinions, and we don't necessarily agree on much, but we do agree that we should not prescribe creed or dogma in our congregations. Instead, we don't just encourage, but we expect each of you to engage in your own free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So if you come to me or each other or whoever you come to with questions about all the typical religious things, is there a God or a higher power? Why do bad things happen? What happens when somebody dies? What is the meaning of life? Can prayer help me with my wants or needs? Or where do we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? Ask me any of these questions, and I have the full right to say something like, I don't know. What do you think? Maybe you should try to figure it out. I have a pretty cushy job, don't I? Okay, I'll try to speak right into here. Problem is, blocks my text. Unfortunately for you, that's not likely to be my answer. Instead, I might launch into a long diatribe about what other religions have said, why I rejected many of those ideas, and how I personally approach such understandings. And be warned, ask me the same question twice, and you'll probably get 3 different answers. And this is not because I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about religious questions. I have. It's just a reflection of how I can engage in many ways of conceptualizing each of these and other questions. One day you might get science, the next day comparative religion, the next day a personal story, the next day philosophy. Hopefully a little humor will be mixed in, not because I don't take these questions seriously, but because I fear we take ourselves too seriously. That's quite all right. If push comes to shove, I personally identify as an atheist. I fully embrace a scientific and natural explanation of our origins, and I hold profound awe for the many accidents and coincidences that produced our cosmos, our planet, and that eventually created us. But no God or deity, in my eye, had any hand in this. But I identify as an atheist for clarity only, because it says much about my beliefs, and I feel a need to be clear that I do not accept any ideas about the gods known to religions. I know that no sentient creator and master planner, no superhuman power engages with our lives and destinies, or rather, I believe that. I have heard and read many statements explaining that I feel this way only because I don't fully understand faith and I don't appreciate the real nature of God. And yet I remain fully unconvinced. But that's me. I know that some of you here agree with my position and many do not. Some hold a fairly traditional Christian image of a benevolent God. Some of you believe in a less engaged God, maybe a creator and inspirer. Some feel a power or force in life that brings energy through nature. Some of you embrace the power of human love as a connecting force. And some of you have other ideas, or many ideas, about what drives our world. And I appreciate and welcome all of your ideas and all of your thoughts. And I want to know how they help you find meaning in life. Often, I think that behind the different words and names, that we are saying something very similar, just holding different images and metaphors that work for us in our own minds. Sometimes I also know that we understand things quite different. But I'm not here today to get too deep into varieties of belief and worldview. My purported topic is to claim why I think our church, or something like it, should be valuable for an atheist, or for that matter, for any of our many neighbors for whom church and religion are not a current part of their own life practice. The unchurched, or nuns, as they are often labeled, are the fastest growing religious group in our country. They show up among all demographics, but are most likely among the younger generations. Some have left churches, usually either in anger or out of boredom, but a growing share never experienced church. Not many years ago, Sunday morning was a protected time, but now most stores are open. It's a prime time for youth sports leagues and other extracurricular activities, and it's busy with people doing brunch. Churches are bleeding members rapidly, a trend that I, in some ways, appreciate. And while I do support the growth of skepticism and self-determination, I also worry a lot, though, about the social and emotional costs that abandoning churches can incur in people's lives. Why do people go to church? Well, a recent Pew survey asked this question of American adults who attend religious services at least once or twice a month. Over 8 in 10 said to become closer to God. 7 in 10 said, so our children will have a moral foundation. And about 2/3 each replied, to make me a better person and for comfort in times of trouble or sorrow. Notice that very few said to hear the engaging and informative sermon. In all of these, there's a common element that by joining together with other persons who have similar worldview, we gain something through this communion. Some find a place for the spiritual, for moral insight, for solace. These are all things that make them feel fuller, more whole, and more a part of something larger. Often, church going is a long-standing family tradition, and it connects us to our parents and ancestors. And we also know that church is much more than belief or Sunday worship, even if that's its primary activity. Church is also potluck suppers, the women's, or now all persons, auxiliary, bingo night, Bible reading class, and so many other things. It's that casserole when you're ill, or visit when you have needs. In short, church brought a special kind of community and sense of belonging into people's lives, providing a support system and a place where one could talk and learn about questions that are not discussed in most forums in American life. This is not readily available to atheists or agnostics, skeptics, freethinkers, secularists, humanists, nonbelievers, or that kind of person by any name. Some nuns still hold on to some of their old spiritual ideas and stay away from church for personal reasons. But those who reject the teachings of the church don't really have a choice. They left it behind. Several things about atheists in this country. Nobody can really count them. A few years ago, like 2019, the same people at the Pew survey group found only about 4% of Americans identified as atheist and another 5% as agnostic. So that's almost 10%. And these numbers reflect a continuing growth in disbelief. And yet, this 10% is much smaller than the 20 to 25% that do not profess a belief in God, or the 60% who do not believe that God hears their prayers and intervenes on their behalf. So how you ask people these questions really does matter. Atheists tend to be remarkably well informed about religion and perform higher than most groups on tests of religious knowledge. Atheists also tend to be highly negative about the role of religion in American life, with 70% of them claiming that religious groups do more harm than good. I've run into these patterns when trying to organize humanist support groups in UU churches. My experience has been that it's almost impossible to hold a conversation with UU humanists that does not soon turn to some form of criticism of religion and blaming religion for most ills in the world. It's just impossible to talk about anything without going there. This is something we have to get over. Atheists should have a much deeper agenda than not liking religion. When asked where they do find meaning in life, most atheists mention family, along with hobbies, creative pursuits, travel, and leisure activity. And this brings me back to why I feel that atheists need church. Atheism itself is only a statement of disbelief, a rejection of belief in a God of any type. As a belief system, atheism is empty, fully devoid of content. And while I identify myself as an atheist for clarity, my true identification is as a religious humanist and a religious naturalist. The reasons are clear to me. When you remove the idea of a higher power running the show, we are what's left. Without the transcendent and powerful force of God, the one entity that remains in which we can invest faith and belief is ourselves, humankind. And I find both clarity and confusion in this demand that we alone are the agents who must take responsibility for our behavior and our fate. We alone create our moral and ethical sensibilities and find mechanisms to encourage compliance with our thoughts. We alone must address environmental threats we have created rather than counting on God to just jump in and save us at the last minute. We alone created God. And so once we reject this belief, we alone must learn to live in a world without its own intention or design or external purpose. We, of course, is each of us and all of us. We can adapt to coming to terms with this brave new world that is not guided by divine purpose, because it is the same world we have always occupied. Only our understanding of it has changed. What we are doing, in the eyes of the atheist, is throwing away a crutch. And we can build meanings and beliefs that help us find our way. In a religion of humanity, our rituals and practices should serve us in finding our way to improve the ways we live and engage with each other. Human happiness and human flourishing can be the keystone elements of our mission and defining and sustaining basic values, our purpose. For all human history, we relied on some sort of externalized theology to explain why things are the way they are and what we should do. We crafted creation stories, like the one we heard this morning, to tell us how we and our world began. Because what we are now learning to be the truth was beyond the range of human imagination. I mean, why should a more primitive person have thought of the Big Bang and evolution and that kind of thing. It just wasn't there. We identified deities with the power to control many aspects of our fate, and we built sacred practices to please them and encourage their good favor. We have always feared death, the final mystery, and in response, we built an understanding that converted death from an absolute ending into a transitional phase. These and many questions, though, still face us. Only now we have to create new answers. We are social creatures. We're prone to seek nurturing and pleasure in groups. We have to seek nurturing and pleasure in groups. It's how we're built. Through our nature to empathize and cooperate, we build social units that shelter and sustain us. Once these groupings were small, familial and tribal, with boundaries we defended actively. We was the people we knew and overtly cared for. Over time, our groupings have expanded and become intertwined. And it's important that we learn how to cooperate and support our fellow humans in new ways at a level approaching global in scale. Finding a basis for human improvement and cooperation is a huge proposition, a task worthy of generations of difficult and caring work. And yet we can still glean wisdoms from the old traditions and not throw out the baby with the bathwater. In particular, a central focus on human compassion has transcended all major religions for the past few centuries, whatever their belief structure, and there's no way we should discard it now. We may change the motivating stories, but the centrality of love, of compassion, and empathy will anchor any religious or moral practices in our future. And while we humanists might have left behind the trappings of traditional religion, many of our fellow humans in this nation and across the world still operate with understandings of divine intention and divine support, and often in a very fundamentalist way. Religions, nations, ethnicities, languages, these are only a few of the fault lines that run through our world order. Our brave new religion must serve to help us find our way through and around biases and to actively tolerate and work with persons who hold different perspectives than any of these dimensions. We need to provide new answers to the old questions at the same time as we learn to harbor respect and tolerance for the older answers. Although many of us found skepticism through a process that involved being harmed by our prior religious groups, Christian bashing has no place in our church or in our world. We can identify harms we experienced, and we can express our anger at what we knew, but then we must move forward and do our own work. Back to the atheists, and as you might guess, my goal is to convince them that they really must be humanists because they can't stand for just nothing. They might not hold beliefs in God, but they continue to need ways to find meaning and purpose, to work through the issues of right and wrong, to frame an understanding of how to live a good life, how to process tragedy and adversity, how to hold an understanding of life and death. So much in our answers to these questions is still a work in process, and much continues and will continue to be shrouded in mystery. Science has come a long way in helping us to understand the natural world and the cosmos, and it's beginning to unpack more of the mysteries of human nature and the workings of the human mind. But science alone cannot bring us answers to all of our questions and cannot fully prepare us for the emotional relationship we hold to ourselves, to one another, and to the world. We need to put in the thought and the effort. We need to do the work to bring us to an understanding of what matters, who matters. And these are tasks that no one can manage alone. They require the shared input of a community of minds and opinions. And these are not tasks that tend to be addressed well in other gatherings, in the workplace, in our schools, through our polity, or in public places. When religion was based on transcendent beliefs, we learned and worked on religious ideas in church. As we shift away from many beliefs, it becomes even more important to have a safe place for considering ideas that are most important to us, a place where questions are welcome, opinions respected, and differences of opinion expected. Our goal in this Unitarian Universalist church is to provide such a place, and all, atheists included, are welcome to try us with our full enthusiasm and endorsement. I know that for some, the trappings are too close to what they found uncomfortable, and even the simple words church and religion might repel some folks. We try to smooth over these problems for our members, but it can't always work, and some find us too churchy for their taste. However, participation in some organization or assembly should be important for all seekers, believers and non-believers alike. And if they are not available, we should invent them. When the nuns first came to public attention, many of us in the UU world said something to the effect of, okay, this is our next big opportunity to build membership, because we knew that we had something we thought they wanted. And we were wrong. And I still can't tell you whether they don't want us or if they just don't really know about us and understand us. All I can do is suggest that each of you share your own experiences here with friends outside of here who you feel may be responsive. I think you might be bringing them a gift. Let's go back to what the research found were the most important reasons why people attended church, traditional believers: to feel closer to God, to build a moral foundation, to become a better person, to find comfort and solace. All we need to do is change a few words in the first item, and we have a pretty good description of what an atheist or humanist might be seeking to support them in their own life understandings. To feel connected to humanity and nature, to build a moral foundation, to become a better person, to find comfort and solace. These are the things that we do in our intentional community of understanding. It can be deeply aspirational, and it possibly can feed the prophetic as we respond to what we learn. We all need a place to push ourselves, to bounce our thoughts off of caring others, and to hear new ideas that are not just echoes of our own. This is how we grow and how we can help our world grow better. So be it, and blessed be. I now invite you